Have you ever met somebody that absolutely blows you away the more you get to know about them? Fellow Toastmasters, honored guest. Some mutual friends introduced Meg and I, hoping that romance would spark. It didn't. But we realized early on we had the makings of a friendship. And so we proceeded down that path. And one day, Megan told me a story about her hands. You see, my friend Megan had a bit of an accident when she was 24 years old. Let's go back to September 11th, 1992. Megan was on her way to a Civil War reenactment with complete Civil War dress, corset, steel corset, important to the story, and she was driving with a 12-year-old son of the mayor, Daniel. She was in a rush to get there because they were running late, and she decided to pass the cars that were going 35 miles an hour, so she checked carefully to see that everything was okay, and she began to pass one car, two car, and as she's passing the third car, she saw them hit their right blinker, and at the last minute, they turned left right into her at 65 miles an hour. She felt the car start to tilt, and then she screamed, "Oh my God, we're going to flip." At that moment, everything went into slow motion. 1, 2, 3, 4. And she thought to herself, will we ever stop turning? And they did at 5. The car laid on its roof. Daniel pointed to her and screamed in horror. And she thought to herself, oh my God, my face is lacerated. He wiggled out of the car, and she eventually got out, and she was grateful that she wasn't paralyzed from the waist down. When she got out of the car, Daniel was pointing at her hands, and she looked down, and she noticed that her left hand was as thin as paper. And then she looked at her right hand, and she said that it looked like meat that a butcher had processed. It was mangled beyond recognition. A friendly bypasser came by and took care of her, and eventually the paramedics came. This is my friend Meg with her horse Basha. The paramedics came and they spoke to her, and eventually the paramedic had to cut the corset off. Thank God it was a steel corset. It saved her life. She was rushed to the hospital. The surgeons met with her and looked at her hands, and they spoke to her. She had a team of surgeons. And she was morphined up, and they talked to her, and they were amazed at how conscious she was being on that much morphine. And then somebody asked, so what is it that you do? She said, I'm a pianist. And I hope to be a piano teacher someday with English as a secondary. She could hear them whisper, damn it, she's a pianist. After hours of operations, she woke back up. Her boyfriend was there to kiss her. And then the next 5 days, she was a guest at the hospital, and she didn't know what had happened and what had transpired because her hands were all bandaged up. The doctors had told her originally that they would probably have to take off her right thumb and would have to cut down her index finger and middle finger down to the first or second knuckle, and that they were going to do their best to make it just the first so that she could play the piano again. Several days later, the Hungarian doctor came into her room and in a thick Hungarian accent said, "I'm sorry, Megan. We had to cut your middle and index fingers down to the second knuckle. But we were able to save your left hand and able to save your right thumb." And he said, "I'm deeply sorry. You'll never play the piano again." She was angry. She was enraged. She was sad. She thought her life was over. She thought because she couldn't play the piano that she would never be loved again. People would never accept her again. And she stewed in that. A couple of days later, she went home. And when she got home, that's the right hand. When she got home, her mother and she went upstairs. And as she went upstairs, there was the piano, seemingly mocking her. And she wept. And then she got motivated. And she said, "Darn it,